We are live. We're recording anyways. Welcome to another episode of the Manaverse Podcast. I'm Tom Traplin, and this is the podcast where we explore what it takes to build a friendly local game store. And we're having a real fun conversation this time around. The date is June 6th, 2025, so we are amidst the chaos and the launch of the Final Fantasy set that everyone has been anticipating forever. So within that context, I'd like to introduce you to DJ Douglas.
Thanks for having me. My name is Douglas Johnson, but basically everybody calls me DJ. I am the owner of Card Garden, which is a small event/online event, Magic the Gathering vending operation in upstate New York in the Syracuse area. I have been buying and selling cards ever since 2009, I'd say. So 15 years in the industry. And I am going to keep doing this until the universe tells me to stop. That's what I've been saying. I've told that to a lot of friends, and then another friend of mine said, but DJ, the universe has told you to stop several times, and you are still here. So I've kind of edited it to, I am here until the universe makes me stop.
That's a good way to put it.
That's kind of where I'm at. Really, really big fan of what I do. Really love the game and everything about it. But we've definitely run into some problems over the years and some frustrations. It's an industry with very high highs and very low lows.
Yeah, and I think right now we're kind of going through a little bit more turbulence than we have been in the past little bit for a variety of reasons. But the topic we're discussing today is the situation with TCG Player and eBay and their authentication center in Syracuse and all of that. So let's give a little bit of a breakdown of what has happened so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know, TCG Player's headquarters is and will soon be in Syracuse, New York. The CEO of the company used to be Chetty Hampton, and he long time Syracuse advocate and just community member who built this company from the ground up in the region. And a few years ago, eBay, known e-commerce platform, bought TCG Player for roughly $300 million. Chetty happily took the buyout. It's hard to fault him for that. Over the past few years, eBay has made notable changes to the platform, and the largest of which a couple weeks ago was announced that eBay will be closing the Authentication Center in Syracuse. That is where all of your TCG Player direct orders currently come through, where all of your TCG Player RIs for the sellers that ship cards, that is where they currently go to. And they will be moving it to their in-house eBay mega headquarters in Kentucky, Louisville.
Yeah. And this is when I was doing research into what was going on, because I was also somewhat on the outside of what was happening and the inner workings of TCG Player and eBay and, you know, the unionization efforts that they've been putting in for the last couple of years.
Yes.
Apparently this was like right before the contract was supposed to be like finalized or something like that. At least that's what I was reading.
Yeah, so there's quite the storied history of TCG Player and labor relations, I guess I will say. They made a unionization attempt in late 2019 that did not go very far, partially because of, it continued into early 2020, and then we all know what happened there. And then a couple years after that, shortly after the eBay acquisition, there was another unionization attempt through CWA, Communication Workers of America. This one had a lot more traction, a lot more organization, a lot more people behind it. And over the past 2+ years, eBay has really dragged their feet on negotiations and just sort of employed every single anti-labor tactic in the American history textbook, and plenty that the American history textbooks leave out. This country has quite the storied history of union busting and Pinkertons and all of that nonsense. But yeah, eBay has really, really dug their heels in. And I think what's coming to light is that all of those tactics were an intentional effort to delay to the point where they could get to this moment of, let's just cut the hand off and move everything and just throw the baby out with the bathwater, whichever old-timey metaphor you would like to use. This is sort of the results of their efforts there of really, really not wanting to engage with the labor or the people that built the warehouse on any degree or any of their demands or contracts or negotiations, and just throw everything out, start over in Kentucky.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty appropriate way to describe it. An appropriate saying for the subject matter at hand, since this does feel like you said, this is history repeating itself in some ways.
Yeah, I am somebody who has a pretty storied history with TCG Player, I would say. We started selling on the platform in, I want to say 2011 or 2012. It was very shortly after they just allowed anybody to make a seller account. You used to have to be a local game store. And then they opened it up to everybody, sort of following it in eBay's footsteps at the time, and grew to this giant e-commerce platform that basically every Magic player has heard of or has used at some point. And I have been involved with TCG Player in some way, shape, or form since those days. I used to write articles. I used to write articles for their website. I used to create content for their YouTube channel. I used to work shortly in the warehouse at the Authentication Center to sort of get the inside scoop on how to improve my own business at the time. I have a very, very storied history with that company, and roughly 2 years ago, they permanently deleted my seller account, which I believe was as a result of my vocal support of the unionization efforts. Of course, causation and correlation, etc. But those things happened at the same time. So yeah, I have plenty of strong feelings about TCG Player personally, but I also have strong feelings about the company professionally. And my seller account aside, all of these people in Syracuse are people who I know and trust and love and have hung out with plenty of times. And it's really unfortunate to see eBay just following the corporate guidebook of unregulated capitalism and just sort of doing whatever they can to just establish 100% market share, or as close they can to it, and just abuse that as they will.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of eBay generally speaking. I think the key point, or at least one of the more interesting points, is, like you said, the timing, right? When you got taken from the TCG Player platform, and it just happened to coincide with, you being critical of the TCG Player platform and supporting the union. In this case, it seems like, well, they're getting to this position where the union may finally be making ground, and then the whole thing gets shut down. Timing, I think, is an interesting aspect of it, because, like you said, they never say, or like the corporation in question never comes out and says, yeah, we can't have a union in here. We got to close this shop up and move it elsewhere. It's always some other reason. But
yeah, there are
laws
otherwise on the books that disallow that, and there are plenty of ways for them to go around that and just let people read between the lines without outright saying the quiet part out loud, for sure.
Yeah. I guess, what would you, if you were the eBay executive, how would you justify closing the Syracuse location? How would you go about doing that if that's what you wanted to achieve, right?
So there's two different answers to this question, and one of them assumes I have a human soul and one doesn't.
Okay.
If I have the soul, if I have the little like animated spark of life inside my heart or brain somewhere, I would just not close the Authentication Center. I would listen to the grievances and frustrations of the staff and the people who have built the company, and I would work with them to find a way to just satiate them and make sure that they're happy in their workplace, because they have built something very, very profitable and very, very large. And I think that is historically the easiest way to satisfy people who are on that lower rung of the socioeconomic ladder, is just like give them the cost of living adjustment they need every few years and just chalk it up on the graph as a cost of doing business and just move on and continue to make money. And there's a way to do that and have a profitable company where everybody is happy and making an amount of money that allows them to pursue happiness and live their life and build a career out of that. And then there is the ultra draconian method they have chosen, which is just use the stick instead of the carrot and just really, really sacrifice any possible short-term or long-term public relations or just good faith or anything really, just because this country is so steeped in unregulated capitalism and anti-labor, just using every tool at their disposal to delay or just like skirt the FTC or just leave everything in a sea of red tape in the courts and just get away with everything while they can.
Yeah. How do you, I guess, I know you can't make an absolute statement, but in your personal opinion, right? Does this feel like it's definitely the union busting? It's definitely that's the goal. That's really what they were trying to do. It's
yes.
nothing to do with the business case or
in the email they sent out to sellers, which was shared to me through a third-party platform on Discord. They said sweet nothings about, oh, this will help us streamline our processes. This will help us make your experience better in the long term. That's what we're here for. We're here to make our authentication systems more streamlined, and putting everything under this one roof hundreds of miles away is the way to go. But I have very, very large doubts about that claim, specifically because this is an industry with a very, very, very high knowledge barrier to entry, and just having these people who have worked at this company for years, going on more than a decade. This is so much knowledge that you are just completely eviscerating. And again, I think if they really, really cared about that long-term goals, they would be providing really generous severance packages or like transportation offers of, oh, we'll just offer to move everyone at the company down to Kentucky. We'll take care of all their needs, all their frustrations. We'll make sure the transition is really smooth. We'll give them this incredible cost of living adjustment. They'll be moving to a lower income area, and they'll be like even more like able to support themselves. That's not what they're doing, because if they were, they would say as such. I think that would be a big part of their PR campaign is, oh, we're shutting down, but don't worry, we're providing all these employees like a really generous opportunity to like come down here to Kentucky and be a part of the industry forever. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. It's like, how do they treat the people that they're displacing? And at least from what it seems like from the outside, it seems like, sorry guys, you're fired. There's really not much else there. I haven't seen the numbers in terms of severance or anything like that, but it sounds like they're just being dismissed. And then that makes you wonder, is that the goal? Is the goal to get rid of the people? Because yes. I'm sure the Syracuse location, as much as you could say it's expensive to operate in New York versus operating in Kentucky, and that's definitely true. But like you said, they could have moved the workforce. They could have said, hey, we're closing up the shop. We're moving stuff over. It's going to streamline some operations. But you've been here for however many years. You're a valued team member. We want to give you the opportunity to go to the new location, and here's how we could transition you. That's not happening, which makes me think you're probably right in the assessment that it's really about getting rid of the people involved, and not so much about the operation per se, or the saving money, or the fact that they're not profitable or something, right? Because that's clearly not the case.
Right. And I feel like this middleman has historically always just been free money. If you are a platform that doesn't have to interact with either of your customers, you just get to provide the tool that both parties are using and then just take the percentage. That's such free money. And Chetty and eBay have both demonstrated as such because of what they have built over decades. And like they clearly have the profit margins to be able to do that, and are just actively choosing not to. And like you said, yes, it is expensive to be a business in New York, but also Chetty did it over 15 years and built this thing, and it has continued to excel and be the premier marketplace. So watching eBay just throw all of that down the drain is really frustrating for me, especially because, like I said, as somebody who is from this area, who sold on the platform for 10 plus years, like I was always very, very happy knowing that my fees were going to my friends, like directly. All of that money I have paid TCG Player, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of 10 years, that goes to my friends' wages, their bonuses, their vacation time, their whatever. Like that is money that is staying in the community. And that's something that's very difficult to do in an e-commerce world, where if you're just an online business, it's like, well, this money is just leaving my local economy. You're coming in through my local economy to my local economy from outside. It's very, very difficult to have that insular feeling of, okay, this is good. I'm still supporting my family and my friends here. And that's part of the reasons this is so personal to me, political leanings aside.
Yeah, it's not abstract. You know the humans involved. You feel the human cost. So obviously it's going to feel a little bit more personal to you. But yeah, of course. How do you feel Chetty would feel about this? I've never spoken to him myself, but I've obviously heard his name plenty of times, and he's well known. How would he have dealt with this if he were still involved? Assuming he's not involved in any way.
He is not, no. It's really tough to say, because I've interacted with him before, personally, several times, and he is one of the people responsible for just cutting me loose from the company on a whim a long time ago. So there is some element of that tech CEO draconian policy where they try to have their employees believe in this sense of community and this sense of core values and like the whole pizza party environment, right? Of like, we got a pool table, cool place to work. And TCG Player has always been a really big fan of that flowery language and that advertised sense of community. But when push comes to shove, they have always, and Chetty, when he was at the helm too, has always been able to just, we don't need you anymore. We're done with you off this one small thing, when it could be this learning opportunity or like, oh, this person made a mistake. Let's try to like help them and see like where they can improve, better themselves. One of their core values is like, oh, go beyond, be a better person over time and like iterate on mistakes. But that's not where they're at. And to bring it back to your question, I don't know how Chetty does feel or would feel about this acquisition and what they're doing with it nowadays. Because like I said, he is a Syracuse native and he is proud of this community and loves this community. That $300 million buyout he got, he has invested a lot of it and is in the process of like building new organizations for philanthropy and like working in low-income communities in the Syracuse area. So I'm sure that there is a part of him that believes he is doing good by the community and like, this sucks, I had to do it, but $300 million, like whomst among us would not take the payout, right? And so there is an element to that where he does believe in the community, but I don't know. That's a great question. I would love to hear his answer on it and talk to him about it, but
Yeah, me too.
believe there would be some mixed feelings in there for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And he built the business to begin with, right? He created something that he loved, and like
he's
you said,
probably
$300 million is a heck of a paycheck.
Right. And over the past decade, I'm sure he has had the chance to look at those numbers and think, oh, God, it'd be way easier to run this company from Oklahoma and just like pick up and move because it is just an online third-party tech marketplace. But he chose to not do that over those years. And I'm sure it does hurt at least, or I'd like to think it hurts at least a little bit for him to watch what's happening now.
Yeah, I would hope so.
But I'm sure there's a line in the contract that he made with eBay that says, hey, you can stay out of this one for now. Like, while we're doing all this.
No disparagements, no comments. You cannot say anything. That's the deal for however many number of years. But that would be fascinating to me anyways, just the human side of somebody who built a business and then sold it and exited and had to walk away from it. How would you feel? But I would feel tremendously mixed, right? If I built something that I really cared about and I sold it to somebody else and then I saw them operating it in a way that maybe I didn't disagree with, but what kind of say do you have at that point, right? You have relinquished control. It's not yours anymore. You know, you sold your thing to the potential devil or whatever, right? That's just kind of the deal you made. But yeah, I'm curious and always skeptical of every big corporation that says that you're part of the family. That's something that, you know, I've had enough experiences to know that that's definitely not the case. You know, the more that they profess that, hey, and I'm not saying this about the smaller stores. I know plenty of store owners who do actually genuinely feel that way about like the people that work with them in a small business. But once it gets to a certain size, that just, it always feels like, you know, language to just get you to stay a little bit later and, you know, commit to, you got to help the team out, right? Can you come in on the weekend? It's just, it always feels like a way to just get you to feel that, you know, that familial guilt, that to get you to go do something that they need. And then as soon as you are no longer part of that team, you're no longer part of the family.
I received, of course, several text messages and DMs on the day of the reckoning from people who said the current CEO of TCG Player, Rob Bigler, made the announcement early in the morning and then immediately ran upstairs, locked himself in his office, and had security escort everyone out within just seconds.
I read that as well. I was wondering about what that actually, like, true, how accurate all of the descriptions were, because it did not seem good. And I'm not surprised that somebody'd say, hey, 200 people, you're all fired. See you guys later. And then run away, because that would be not I'm sure that's not a space that you'd probably want to take questions in. But having a bunch of security guards come in and just bully everybody out of the building, that seems pretty inhumane, I would say.
Yeah, and I think timing and the method of delivering the message is another tactic. It's not accidental. It's not, oh, we forgot we were going to do this 2 weeks ago, but whoopsie, we got to say it now. No, like the shock and just immediate trauma and confusion and fear, all of that is intentional by eBay. It is a weaponization of the employees' emotions and their confusion, and just it's tough to organize when you're scared, when you're unsure of the future and all of that. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, especially when like your livelihood's all thrown up into chaos and, you know, you need to probably go find another job because most people are not living super secure at the moment. So it's not like you can just, I'm just going to be on the picket line and rally for the next few months and we'll be okay. No, like everybody's got to get to work, right? Then they have to figure their life out pretty much immediately, and you're throwing them into a situation that is incredibly stressful. So obviously their ability to push back on it is going to be compromised. How much of this is eBay and how much of this is TCG Player? That was another thing I had in mind.
I think it is mostly eBay making the decisions. But like I said, with my history with Chetty, that company has always had a total allegiance with this draconian tech bro mindset. I used to make jokes about how how Chetty just wants to be Jeff Bezos. And he followed in Amazon's footsteps a lot of the way through with his platform, with his just everything that he was implementing. And so I don't know how much of it is eBay and how much of it's TCG Player and whether that's a line there. I think the line to draw is much more like where the salary figures lie, and like once you hit a certain salary number, that's where the opinions that tend to be. Once you get into the alphabet titles or CEO, CFO, just various corporate suits. I think the good line to draw is like, has this person ever touched a magic card before? Like, has this person ever historically acted in the industry? And have they ever worked at a local game store or ever had to deal with the day-to-day problems of an LGS owner? Or can they distinguish a counterfeit magic card? Like, I imagine the opinions the Venn diagram is much closer on that axis.
Yeah, that might be the line. I was just curious because that's been a line of thought in the Magic community. Which part is like which aspect of the way MTG is right now is coming from Wizards and which is coming from a directive from Hasbro, right? And once you get the big umbrella corporation over top of your little niche corporation business that grew up into something that you became that you loved, but now it's owned by something bigger, it's always a question of like, well, who's pulling the strings here? Who's determining the direction things are going? And I feel like it's hard to say. And like that, maybe that is also part of the shifting the blame, right? Oh, it's not me. It's the, the big wigs up top. I didn't call the shots. You can't blame me. I've got somebody else I can pass it along to, and then they can just pass it along to, well, it's not us that's determining the decision. It's the numbers. It's the economy. There's an infinite number of ways to just pass the blame until there's nobody else to complain to, but the people still pay the price.
For sure.
Yeah. No, that would be an interesting thing to find out. Which who's really responsible for saying this is going to happen? Right, we're going to make this decision. We're going to close this down. We're going to dismiss all of these people. Here's how it's going to roll out.
And we talked about this a little bit before the recording started, but I don't. And there will be plenty of comments on this of like, oh, you can't blame eBay for like looking at the numbers and just doing what needs to be done as a business, right? Like just what you said, like they're just looking at the numbers. If they have to go to Kentucky to make a profit, then like that's just what they have to do. New York has to suck it up. But like historically in this country, capital has always been willing to sacrifice the actual greater good for their sense of control, even when it means lower profits in the short and long term. And I think a lot of that is going to happen in this industry. I mean, we have a skill set that is very, very niche and is very, very hard to train. Assuming these Syracuse employees, none or very few of them are going to Kentucky, I think that messaging from eBay of, oh, you won't, as a seller, you won't have any disruption at all. You won't notice any issues. You'll just send in your stuff as normal and we'll process it as normal. You're not going to even notice that we're in Kentucky now. I don't think that's true, because part of getting to pay a much lower wage number in Kentucky is getting people to sign up for that wage who care less about their job. And you're going to have so many more instances of, I'm not paid enough to care about this, when it comes to you getting your borderless foil versus your showcase foil, or getting an alternate art card or a bad condition card, or you're going to have these issues of people working in the authentication center in Kentucky who are much less emotionally invested in their industry and who are less financially invested in their industry. And you're going to have more mistakes on top of that. And how bumpy can the ride be before it just falls off the tracks? Like if we have this massive issue of very, very green people, just this influx of 200 to 300 people at TCG Player 2.0, and like we have RIs that are getting reimbursement invoices for sellers, basically the fulfilled by Amazon system, where like sellers send their cards into TCG Player to get authenticated. When you buy cards off TCG Direct, you're getting those cards. That's the system. So you're having these people in the middleman warehouse who are less skilled at a job that has very, very high attention to detail requirements. Like, hand 5 cryptic commands to your grandma and have them be like list printing, Orwin printing, Modern Masters 2, and a couple of them varying conditions, and like have them
which one's counterfeit?
right, and just all of these issues of different sets, cards getting miscatalogued, cards getting filed away wrong. There's so many chances in this gaming space for very, very, very high dollar amounts just be eviscerated off small errors. Like, oh, my dual land is the wrong condition, minus $50. Oh, this package of cards got filed away in the wrong spot. Now they're never going to be found again until we do a huge, massive audit. That's minus $200 if 10 shocklands are put in the wrong place, right? Like, there's so many issues where things can arise, and having that depth of knowledge on a warehouse team that knows where things should be, and people who have been with the system for years and years, you're losing a lot there. And so the argument of, oh, eBay is just going to do this because it makes sense with the numbers really doesn't hold up, and historically hasn't held up in these spaces where companies just uproot, move somewhere else, and just hire cheaper labor. Those don't work out for the good of the vertical chain and everybody involved in it.
Yeah, no, it's a very difficult spot, and like I don't think you can make the argument that, although some have, and I was seeing that in the discussion on Reddit about what was going on. I don't think you can make the argument that this is just about the dollars and cents and its efficiency, and we're just streamlining and all of that, and then they're going to position it that way. But I don't think mathematically that really works out. I think
right, like
the motivation is obviously not that.
I can quote so many different examples historically, like the Pullman strike with the rail cars, the Reagan and the air traffic controllers, like the hard hat riot in New York City. Like there's plenty of examples in American history specifically of just like capital using brute force, both economically and literal physically. Again, like they hired guards to come in and just harass TCG Player employees. Like there's so many examples of that in our country, and just the same thing happening over and over again. And eBay just being able to trick just enough people into thinking it's just the cost of doing business. It's how it is in America. Like that's just, they create just enough people for us to have to fight against and spend time explaining and teaching and showing about that they're not the bad guys. The people being fired here are not the bad guys for wanting a living wage, and then the robber barons get to continue doing their thing.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate in a whole sort of ways. What can somebody do if they want to, I guess, support, or like what would you, if someone is listening to this and they're a store owner, or if somebody's listening to this and they're just interested, what would you want them to do to either support or, improve the situation in some way?
Yeah,
what's
absolutely.
the step? What's the path forward?
Well, organizing is good, and supporting those who are unionizing and who are organizing and listening to the leaders of those in those positions is step one. And I think last week, a little over a week ago, CWA did officially call for a boycott of TCG Player. So step one would just be find somewhere else to buy or sell your cards. As a seller and as an ex-seller who was removed from the platform, that's really hard. It is incredibly difficult to sell on a place that is not just eBay or TCG Player, because there's a reason that company is very big, and because it's the place where so many people go to buy cards, and boycotts are very, very difficult, both to get the word out and to accept that sacrifice as the consumer. It's tough, and it can be difficult to find an alternative solution that isn't just more painful or more frustrating to use. Card Kingdom is the name that comes up most often, sort of the largest or one of the largest gaming stores in the country in terms of inventory size and online depth. They tend to have a little bit higher prices and higher shipping costs, etc. And they don't always have everything you need in one spot, whereas TCG Player, you can generally just buy one of everything. If you need it, somebody has it listed on TCG Player. So moving to a different platform is step one. Card Kingdom did actually, over the past few years, go through a lot of the same labor struggles as TCG Player has. Card Kingdom famously moved their warehouse about some number of miles outside the city in a similar effort to dissuade organization, but Card Kingdom did eventually come to a contract with their union. So when you do buy from Card Kingdom, you are supporting organized employees and organized labor. There are marketplaces that are trying to compete with TCG Player, and so giving them all the support they can is very helpful. The two that come to mind immediately are Card Trader, cardtrader.com, and manapool.com. They're two of the people who are trying to compete in the space with TCG Player. And Card Trader's existence is one of the things that sparked this larger union debate and caused TCG Player to go way more draconian when it came to like removing seller accounts like mine, is because I was suggesting and pitching alternatives to TCG Player vocally like Card Trader, and that is one of the reasons they removed my seller account, I believe. So finding other places to do your business is step one, and I don't think there's many steps beyond that, because like you said, if eBay is just listening to the dollar amount, we're just going to do what the invisible hand says. If you play their game and beat them at capitalism as an organized system of Magic players and workers and employees and all of this, and they watch the numbers go down, then you do force their hand. All of us can collectively do this, in the same vein as I used to make this argument when people complain Magic card prices are too high. If enough people don't buy them, then the prices will come down. If you're frustrated that Final Fantasy collector booster boxes are 700, get enough people to just say, we're good, then sellers will start undercutting each other. And it does work the same on a larger scale. It's much more difficult. It's real tough to organize, and it's real tough to band together in these times that we live in. But I do think that is step one, is listening to the labor organizers, finding another place to buy and sell cards when they do call for a boycott. And I mean, supporting through calling your representatives, just getting organized in general is just a very, very good place to start.
I agree. I like all that. I'm glad you gave people the alternatives. I think that is a really healthy aspect to everything. And I think that is where TCG Player and eBay, in an extent, are opening themselves up, right? The more comfortable and complacent you get as a giant corporation, the more opportunity for somebody who's smaller, who does things a little more ethically, to come in and take away your customer base that you no longer particularly care about. So shout out to Manipool, Card Trader, Card Kingdom, get out there. Like there are other places to go. TCG Player is not the only option.
Game stores, messaging your local vendors. I mean, I am somebody who my store is no longer on TCG Player, so a lot of my orders are just people messaging me saying, hey, do you have these cards? I would rather not give TCG Player money. And that's the best way to go about it, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a good takeaway. Is that at least right now, if you do not support the decision, if you think this is unfair, you don't like it, there are other places to take your business. There are other things that you can do, and money talks, right? If that's their thing, and if eBay is just making those choices,
because it is much harder as a seller to find somewhere else to sell your cards. It's not too hard to find somewhere else to buy your cards. The internet does exist and allows us to just reach directly to other people or other small stores or something like that. But like, the number of marketplaces that exist and have a catalog depth, because our industry is so insane with all the number of individual items we have, it's harder to find a place to sell your cards. But I think that is much more impactful for TCG Player, because TCG Player they're nothing without buyers, but they're nothing without sellers either. And there's a much smaller number of sellers, like I imagine like sub 10,000 active sellers who are consistently uploading reasonably large numbers of inventory that are not just Magic players selling their deck kind of thing. And so if that smaller pool of people were to just collectively stand up and aid in the boycott, and TCG Player has no listings for cards anymore, then that makes it much easier for the buyers to follow the boycott and to find somewhere else to buy their cards. Because like, if TCG Player doesn't have the allure of a deep stock, super low prices, best price in the room, if they don't win on any of those axes, then they don't win anywhere. But step one is the sellers, which is the hardest part, because it's real tough to look a game store owner in the eye and say, hey, I know you make like 30 grand a week on TCG Player, and I know you use that to pay your employees, but the best thing to do from this prisoner's dilemma greater good thing is for you to not do that and hunker down and get a lot less money in the short term. That's tough. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah, it's not the easiest transition, especially for the sellers that are like, that's their bread and butter, right? That's where they make their money. It's a hard ask to say, stop supporting this platform. I think doing a transition and maybe shifting to other places. And I know the idea of like, it's really hard because like, Manipool's new, it's just getting started. They've only been running for like a little over a year now, and they're still getting that ball rolling. They're still getting to that critical mass of, depth of inventory and sellers and buyers and all of the things that you need for a marketplace to function, and to really be a true competitor in the sense of like the scale of TCG Player. But like you said, that's really not actually as far of a gap as it seems, because we're talking about 10,000 people. That's a lot in an absolute sense, but that's not a lot in terms of the millions of transactions that occur and the amount of money. And like, that's a relatively small number of people compared to the overall market, that if it's just a few of them, just a 10, 20% started to list on another platform and just started to push in that direction, the early adopters the rest of us will follow, right? Like it kind of tips things over, and there's an exponential growth curve. It's not a linear thing. That's the good and the bad, is that we all shift to one side pretty rapidly and we all accumulate in one spot once we kind of settle in. But when the change happens, it's like a tsunami. Everyone just moves over to the next thing, right? MySpace was huge until it wasn't, until it was dead. And then it was Facebook. But who knows what the next, iteration of that platform will be. But change can happen. So there's definitely options out there right now. And I think we would probably all be better served with a little bit more competition in the marketplace and not letting, certain business partners that we rely on get away with things that we don't agree with.
Right. And there's a larger policy discussion here about the other way you can help, in addition to just the boycott, is to work with your local representatives and work within your local system to help elect people who will fight for you on these kinds of policies, and make it so that there are systems in place so that eBay can't do this.
Yeah.
This is not a thing in non-American countries. Like, Europeans and like plenty of other countries look at America and wait, you can't. They did that. They can't do that here, because the Overton window is so far gone of just what is acceptable and what's not.
Yeah.
We can do better as humans, and there's plenty of live physical evidence just looking across either pond in either direction where the systems are in place to do that.
Yeah, I think never stop striving to improve and make things better if we can. I think a lot of people feel like there's not much reason to try, because there's an element of feeling like it's a lost cause. I don't really think that's true. I think there's always opportunity to make things better. As long as we're alive, we can improve stuff. So don't give up. Don't feel like, there's no way out and we're stuck in whatever system we happen to be occupying and whoever happens to be in power, and it's just the way it is. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. I want to end this on a hopeful message, though, because right now it kind of stinks for the people who are involved and the people affected. For anyone who has, thoughts on the subject, I would also love to know what's the discussion on this and what you think and where you sit with regards to TCG Player and how it affects your business and what you would like to see out of, a possible alternative and that sort of thing.
Yeah, this can happen in your community, regardless of what industry you're in, regardless if you're an LGS owner. What's happening to the TCG Player employees can happen to you, whatever industry you're in, for sure.
Yeah.
In your area, whether it's a supermarket, whether it's whatever you are doing and whatever sparks joy for you, this kind of thing can happen to your community.
Yeah.
I would also like to shout out, in terms of like solution-based pitches, the Responsible Online Commerce Coalition is a organization that is trying to build a coalition of online sellers to fight back against these tech giants like Amazon, like TCG Player, and sort of build a legal precedent to create systems that don't allow them to have these crazy strong-arm monopolies that just let them sit on their laurels like robber barons. Amanda Lewis is a ex-FTC lawyer who is spearheading this, and you can follow her on the various social media platforms. I'll send them to Tom so he can put them in the show notes, and put all these little links in the show notes so you can click on them and just get involved. Even just getting on like a newsletter is important and helpful for sure.
Yeah. And we'll have all that stuff in the notes. So if you want to dig deeper and think and look at some of the things that we talked about, definitely go check that out. The link will be on Manaverse Saga somewhere. And then feel free to let us know your thoughts and comments on this whole situation and how it develops, because it's an ongoing. This is still happening, right? This is live as it happens.
I believe the date for the Authentication Center to be officially closed is August 11th or early August, and I believe they are in the process of phasing out employees until that date. So some employees were given later termination dates to phase it out and have this seamless transition to Kentucky, which I do not have high hopes for. As somebody whose seller account was removed from the platform, I'm not going to experience it personally, but I think that sellers who expect this to be a hunky-dory transition over the next year or so will be in for a rude awakening.
For sure. All right. Well, we'll keep everybody posted, and we'll try to do updates. Or I'll try to do updates as we go, and how things are playing out. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Thanks for joining me and having this discussion. It wasn't the most fun discussion and the most pleasant of topics, but it's important to talk about. And I appreciate your time and obviously your knowledge and your expertise on the subject.
Yeah, difficult conversations are important, but I think that is why they are important, because they're difficult. I really appreciate having me on. Again, my name is Douglas DJ Johnson. You can find me on most social media at Card Garden, on all the various Card Garden MTG. If you Google that, you will find my little online store where I create personalized booster packs for people, so you can sign up for repacks, but actually good. They are bespoke, they are made to you, and they are guaranteed to have value in them equal to what you pay for.
Absolutely. And I can vouch for it. I've got my own. They're excellent. DJ will hook you up with exactly what you want. So if you're interested in having some cool Magic stuff sent to you every single month, check out Card Garden.
Cool Magic stuff that does not support TCG Player, another place to buy cards.
That's right. Exactly. All right. Well, we'll see everybody again in the next episode of the Manaverse Podcast.